channel. It's another beautiful Saturday morning about at 10:48 a.m. Apologies, we are a bit late, partly because yesterday's live really dragged on, but better late than never. So we are here to have that weekend conversation about everything sports, about everything football, from the Premier League, from the transfers, and much more. So that's where our conversation today is going to rotate. That's where our conversation today is going to rotate. But we are back, as we promised. We are back for yet another broadcast on Football Tribe. And I'm glad to be back. I'm really, really glad to be back. So, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Just trying to have our audio tested before we get into the thick of the conversation this morning. Yes, need to check something here and make sure everything does align well for us before we kickstart today's conversation. I think in as far as our audio is concerned, we are good to go. We are set to go. Everything is set for us to go. And yeah, we are good to go. 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 Anyways, it's good to have you back. And yeah, yesterday we had our longest broadcast that took us about 2 hours and 10 minutes. Quite remarkable. I did not envision myself doing something of that length, but I'm also glad that we did it and we successfully completed it. And that's all thanks to you guys. That's all thanks to you guys. And yeah, much appreciated. But as I wait for the rest of you to join us, today we'll be looking at, we'll be previewing that game on Sunday between Arsenal and Newcastle. Of course, we'll be looking at the other fixtures. Then we'll be looking at the game between, yes, that game between Arsenal and Newcastle. We'll be looking at Emiliano Martinez's news, Milos Kake's. There's some news there regarding Liverpool and the AFC Bournemouth left back. And then, of course, I want to send my shout outs to the people that were with yesterday. Now, of course, I can't exhaust all of them, but I'd like to really mention a few there, including Mariam Omoto, a Liverpool fan, Rabin Vlog, a Barcelona fan from Nepal, then Chaten Singh from India, Len Mitz is a usual suspect, although he had been away for quite some time. Safa Ali, and a Fenerbahce fan from Turkey, as well as a Tamal Prince, an Arsenal fan from the UK, whose business it does combine Congo, Haiti, as well as Jamaica. But so really, those are some of the people that I wanted to, give a shout out to. And then, of course, we will also get to discuss that game between Manchester City and Crystal Palace for the FA Cup final. And we get to see what it does have in store for us in as far as that particular fixture is concerned for the FA Cup finals and what it may mean for either teams coming into that fixture today at 6:30 p.m. East African time or 18:30 hours again East African time at Wembley Stadium. So that's going to be the gist of the conversation in as far as today is concerned. So I'll give it a bit more time as I will wait for more of you guys to join the broadcast, so that we can get the conversation going. But it's good to be back. It's good to be back. We had a very engaging and fruitful broadcast yesterday because of some of the people I've mentioned, because of their contribution, because of their questions and that kind of thing. So it really helped. It it helps me to tackle topics that maybe ordinarily I would have skipped, maybe I've not talked about in depth enough, and that kind of thing. But yeah, we are glad to be here. So, anyways, let's kick things off with the news of Emiliano Martinez. Now, yesterday, of course, yesterday there were two Premier League fixtures in which Chelsea beat up against Manchester United by a goal to nil. That goal scored by Marco Cucurella in the second half, with Richard James providing the assist and Pedro Neto being involved in the pre-assist in that game. But as Chelsea continued with their push for a top 5 place finish for the season to see that they can qualify for the UEFA Champions League, which is where the captain, Richard James, says they do belong, that Chelsea belong to be up there to competing with the big boys in the UEFA Champions League. So they did win that game by a goal to nil, and that result put them in 4th place on the Premier League table, while Aston Villa's result that had initially pushed them to 4th sent them back to 5th place after that victory for Chelsea. Of course, Aston Villa on the other side had earlier on beaten up against Tottenham Hotspurs by 2 goals to nil. Enzri Kosa with the goal for Aston Villa, as well as Boubacar Kamara. Yeah, they were the players on target. Oli Watkins providing the assist for the first goal, while Morgan Rogers did provide, I think, was it? Yes, I think it was Morgan Rogers who provided the assist for that goal scored by Boubacar Kamara for the second goal on the night for Aston Villa. Yes, it was Morgan Rogers providing the assist for that goal. So that in itself left the two teams in 4th and 3rd place respectively for Chelsea and Aston Villa. But what made the news in the aftermath of that Tottenham and Aston Villa game was the goalkeeper, Emiliano Martinez, left in tears. Twice he's been voted the best FIFA goalkeeper of the year in the year 2022, when they were winning the FIFA World Cup with Argentina in Qatar, and then I think the subsequent year in 2023 he was named the best FIFA goalkeeper on 2 occasions. So yesterday he was left in tears. He appeared to be saying his goodbyes to the fans for what was his final game at Villa Park, because he has featured ever since joining Aston Villa in 2020, joining them from Arsenal. He has played for them 211 games. So in 211 games, yesterday appeared to be his final game at Villa Park, and at the end of it, he was in tears as he waved goodbye, or at least that is what the impression he gave, as he waved goodbye to those Aston Villa fans at Villa Park. It was a bit of an emotional moment, and even when the manager, Unai Emery, was asked about the situation in the aftermath of the game, he didn't give conclusive answers in regards to the future of the Argentine goalkeeper. He simply said, "We will see," when he was pressed about his contract situation and whether he will be staying at the club. Now, when he joined them from Arsenal in 2020, he did put pen to paper on a 5-year contract, which essentially will be ending in June this year. So apparently, according to reports that I've read and seen, is that he does have a strong interest from Saudi Pro League clubs. He has offers from that side, but also he has offers from big teams across Europe, although those big teams have yet to be revealed and that kind of thing. So Emiliano Martinez, do not be surprised that when the season ends, he does leave Aston Villa. Of course, it will be a very, very big blow for Aston Villa in as far as their team is concerned, because he's been quite a revelation. He's been quite a brilliant player for Aston Villa, and I thought he's poised them himself really well. Of course, he's not perfect. He has his shenanigans. Sometimes he gets moments of the game get to his head. He has those antics that he usually does, especially when maybe there's a penalty moment and that kind of thing. But that's all part of the game. So he did appear to bid farewell to the Aston Villa fans. He was in tears, and we'll wait to see how that goes, because Aston Villa's final game of the season will be away to Old Trafford, in which they will be playing Manchester United. That's next weekend. So that's the only chance he had to say goodbye to the Aston Villa fans, should it be the case that he will eventually leave the club in the summer. So that's the news on that. And then yesterday, still about news. This is about transfers. Yes, transfers. Before we get into the Man City and Crystal Palace game, and this news is regarding Liverpool, because Liverpool are interested in signing Milos Kakez from AFC Bournemouth. That's a left back. He's a player that we've spoken about here on multiple occasions. But Liverpool will have to compete with Chelsea and supposedly Real Madrid for the signature of the AFC Bournemouth defender, who is had a very brilliant season at AFC Bournemouth, just as much as Dinhausen has had. Now, still about Dinhausen, he has signed a 5-year contract with Real Madrid after completing his medical in London yesterday. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. He's put pen to paper on a 5-year contract that runs him until June 30th, 2030. So that's done, but Liverpool are pressing to sign Milos Kakez, and it is reported that if they are indeed to land him, or any other team that may want his services, it will cost them a fee in the region of £45 million to win over the player from AFC Bournemouth. So remember, Liverpool have already advanced in talks to sign Jeremy Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen as a replacement for Alexander Trent-Arnold, who will be leaving the club at the end of the season. Now, as unfortunate as that may be for Liverpool and its fans, and maybe the team at large, because yesterday I was again watching an interview on Sky Sport between Gary Neville and Mo Salah, and he said, Mo Salah said he will miss Alexander Trent-Arnold because of the relationship they had down that, right flank. So he will miss that relationship. They have always had a good understanding, but he said he did understand why the player is leaving. He says it's not easy to be in the same place for 20 years, and he went on to say that while fans may feel sad that he's leaving, he deserves nothing but respect and applauses for him having been at the club for 20 years. The way he said it was that you come to the same place every single day of your life, almost, at least. You do the same thing, you train, play the games, and he's won it all. And that is something we've talked about here before, that Liverpool fans, as bad as it may feel, I do understand from an Arsenal fan perspective, from a football fan perspective, when you feel sad that one of your big players, one of your star players is leaving. I do remember after that 2006-2007 season, when Thierry Henry was leaving Arsenal, we all remember after, I think, the 2010-2011 season. Was it? I think after, was it 2009-2010 season, when Cesc Fabregas eventually leaves for Barcelona? We all remember him being handed the Barcelona jersey in the aftermath of the finals of the World Cup in 2010 that were between Spain and Netherlands, and we all felt bad as Arsenal fans. But for me, I was still happy that he had won an Arsenal shirt. We remember Robin van Persie joining Manchester United. Manchester United fans remember David Beckham leaving the club to join Real Madrid. That was sad for them. Liverpool again, Michael Owen leaving the club to join Real Madrid. Tottenham fans must have felt the same way when Gareth Bale left Tottenham to go and join Real Madrid, as well as Luka Modric, because those were big players leaving their clubs to go for greener pastures. So Mohamed Salah did say he does understand where Alexander Trent-Arnold is coming from. He does understand that after 20 years, you need the change. You feel the need to change. You also want to test yourself. You want a new challenge. After all, he's won it all at Liverpool. He's won the UEFA Champions League, that was in 2019. He's won 2 Premier League titles in 2020 and in 2025. He's won an FA Cup, 2 Carabao Cups, a Community Shield, a FIFA Club World Cup, as well as the UEFA Super Cup. Really, so as far as club football is concerned at Liverpool, there's really nothing left for him to win that would be new. So that is why he chose to leave the club. And so he was encouraging Liverpool fans not to be mean, not to be toxic the way, okay, he didn't use the word toxic, but at least that is how we explained it when we did a full broadcast about that same situation, because there were some boos and applauses as he came on in last weekend in that 2-all draw between Liverpool and Arsenal. So that's how he spoke about it. So as unfortunate as that is, Liverpool are already looking to replace him with Jeremy Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen in a deal expected to be in the region of 35 to 40 million pounds as per his release clause. And then, so that is where Milos Kakes also comes in. He's a player we've spoken about before again in relation to Liverpool, because they are looking for a left back to help support Robertson on the left side of the pitch. So we will see how that deal transpires. And then Liverpool are interested in signing Adam Wharton, the central midfielder from Crystal Palace. Now, again, Liverpool will have to face competition from the likes of Manchester United, from the likes of Chelsea. I do not know why, but for some reason, Chelsea is mentioned in literally every player that is on the move. But that's been the case for the last 2 years. And I think, yeah. So Adam Wharton, Manchester United and Chelsea have been mentioned in the conversation, but Liverpool want to sign him. We all remember that last summer Liverpool wanted to sign a central midfielder, but they failed in their attempts or in their pursuit for Martin Zubimendi, so they couldn't pull off the deal. And we all know what has happened with Martin Zubimendi with his pending move to Arsenal. So Liverpool are looking elsewhere, and they identified Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton as their next star. But before we leave Crystal Palace, the other Crystal Palace two players on demand are Eberechi Eze, who is being looked at by Chelsea, and Arsenal have done some scouting work on him, as well as Mark Guehi, that's the captain, who is of interest to still Chelsea because they need a centre back, as well as a Newcastle. So keep your eyes peeled on those reports, but we'll find time and do more on that in regards to transfers. So for now, I just wanted to give that Liverpool news for the likes of Mariam Omuto, who is a Liverpool fan, for the likes of Okoyo Amlen, who is a Liverpool fan, and other Liverpool fans out there that were with us yesterday on the different broadcasts. Anyways, let's move on to the game between Manchester City and Crystal Palace for the FA Cup final. Tamal Prince is back with us. Yes, this is one of the people I was giving out my shout outs to earlier on in the broadcast, because they were with us yesterday for the longest period. And thank you, Tamal. How is the UK? Hope you're doing well. Good to have you back. So we do have the finals of the FA Cup coming up today, and it's a big game because the FA Cup is the oldest competition in football in as far as English football is concerned. So it's a very, very important tournament for most of the for all the teams in the UK, and that's why big clubs, when they fail to win the league, when they fail to win the European competitions, they always feel, at least let's win the FA Cup and walk away with something, and walk away with a piece of silverware. So usually that's the expectation, or that's the hope, that's the prayer, because it's a big competition. Arsenal, I think, have won it the most times historically with about 14 their tally, and then Manchester United maybe with 13 thereabout in terms of numbers, and I think Liverpool have it about 7 times or so. So anyways, it's Crystal Palace versus Man City for the FA Cup final. Now, for the history between these two sides, in as far as the Premier League is concerned, you know that Man City have the upper hand. They've always beaten up against Crystal Palace, and I remember their last meeting at the Etihad Stadium in the Premier League, Crystal Palace cruising into a 2-0 lead. I think Eberechi is being one of the goal scorers, and I think Ismail Sarr maybe, and then they missed out on an opportunity to make it 3-0. That opportunity fell to Eberechi Eze. But that notwithstanding, Man City came from 2 goals down to win that tie by 5 goals to 2. Kevin De Bruyne scoring a brilliant free kick in that game. So really, for me, when it comes to Crystal Palace versus Manchester City, it feels a little bit of an imbalanced game. It gives me the vibes or reflections of Manchester United versus Tottenham Hotspur during that time when Tottenham Hotspur were still under the charges of Harry Redknapp, and Manchester United were still being managed by Sir Alex Ferguson. That no matter what kind of form Manchester United came in, no matter what kind of game it was, Manchester United just beat up against Tottenham. And for me, that's the kind of feeling that I get when I see this Crystal Palace versus Man City game. Now, of course, the final is totally something different, and their route to the final for Crystal Palace has been nothing but remarkable, because in the quarterfinals they beat up against Fulham by 3 goals to 0. I think at Craven Cottage, and at the semi-finals in Wembley they beat up against Aston Villa by 3 goals to 0. So again, Ebelechi is on target, as well as a brace from Ismail Sarr on the day. So that's the kind of part of the journey they've had up until this stage. Of course, on the other side, Manchester City knocked out Nottingham Forest at the semi-finals, beating them by 2 goals to 0. Tamal Prince asks, who do you think will win the UEFA Champions League? Let me get back to you on that before the broadcast ends. So, I mean, when I look at that kind of comparison, I feel that Man City, by all standards and measures, have the upper hand. Of course, when you go to their squads, a man-to-man, Manchester City is the better team. Even if you look at the league table, by all measures and standards, really, Man City are by far the better team. Now, when you look at the form guide in their last 5 games across all competitions, you'll notice that Man City have been on a very impressive run. They've had 4 wins out of the last 5 fixtures. They are only draw coming against Southampton last weekend. The surprise result, I think, for most of us, we did not expect Man City to go to be involved in a goalless draw against Southampton at St Mary's Stadium, but that was the result. But prior to that, they did beat up against Wolves by 1-0, beat up against Nottingham Forest by 2 goals to 0. That was in the FA Cup semi-final that we just mentioned about. They beat up against Aston Villa by 2 goals to 1. The winning goal coming very late on in the game, that goal scored by Matthias Nunes. And then they beat up against Everton by 2 goals to 0. All their goals came late in the game. I think it was Nick O'Reilly and Mateo Kovacic that scored in that game against Everton. And yet for Aston Villa, I think the first goal scorer was Rico Lewis in that game, in that 2-1 victory for Man City. So, and yet when you look on the side of Crystal Palace, of course, they also come in this particular fixture on the back of beating up against Tottenham Hotspur by 2 goals to 0. Again, Ebelechi is being one of the goal scorers. And then rewind it a bit back, they had the 1-1 draw against Nottingham Forest, beat up against Aston Villa in the semi-finals of the FA Cup to get to the finals by 3 goals to 0. Shared the spoils with Arsenal in a 2-2 draw, as well as being forced into a goalless draw against FC Bournemouth. That time, in that game, Crystal Palace were down to 10 men because Christian Richards, the red card. So, but they managed to salvage a point out of that game. So it's going to be a very entertaining game that we do expect between the two sides. And of course, like most games are won in the midfield, and that's where I expect the biggest battles to be. That's why I do expect Adam Wharton, if he's not injured, to be in that starting. But Adam Wharton is reported to be having an ankle injury, and then Reid did suffer an LLC, as well as Diakore is equally injured. So I'm having a phone call, but I won't answer that. So, anyways, those are some of the injury concerns. While John Stones is only injured Manchester City player that is known at this stage. So you expect the battle to be in that midfield. Just give me a second. Anyways, let's continue. Let's continue. Apologies, guys. I needed to respond to that urgent call. So you do expect the battle to be won in that midfield, but usually it's hard to predict what kind of midfield the manager in Pep Guardiola is going to field. Sometimes he will surprise you and bring, a Rico Lewis in that midfield. He will surprise you with a Nick O'Reilly at left back, and then you would see Kevin De Bruyne maybe dropped, or Bernardo Silva or Mateo Kovacic. So it's oftentimes hard to predict what kind of team is going to field. But then on the other side, Will Hughes and Jefferson Lemma will have to do whatever it takes to try and hold off that Man City side. And then Joan Felipe Mateta will need to keep Josh Gvardiol and Ruben Diaz on their toes in terms of that Man City backline, just as much as you expect Erling Haaland to give McQuarrie a lot of trouble, as well as Maxence Lacrosse and yes, and Chris Richards. So it's brought Erling Haaland, who has had a good season. Of course, not as good as the first two campaigns for him at Man City, but nonetheless, he scored 21 goals in the Premier League. Then Joan Felipe Mateta, who has been quite a revelation this season, quite very impressive. So and that kind of thing. So you do expect that, he will both strikers will be looking to cause trouble for the respective defenses. But anyways, here are the probable lineups for that particular fixture. That Dean Henderson will start in goal for Crystal Palace. Chris Richards, Maxence Lacrosse, Mark Gay in a back three. Then Daniel Munoz, Will Hughes, Jefferson Lemma, and Derek Mitchell in that midfield of four. And then ahead of them will be Ismail Sarr, as well as Ebelechi Eze and Joan Felipe Mateta to lead the lines. Then for Manchester City, the expectation will be Ederson Morales in goal, Josh Gvardiol alongside Ruben Diaz in that centre-back pairing, Matheus Nunes at right back, as well as Nico O'Reilly at left back. Then a double pivot of Mateo Kovacic alongside Bernardo Silva, because Nico Gonzalez has not really featured in many games ever since joining them in January. He did play some games when he had just reported, but maybe Pep Guardiola is looking to ease him into this English football in another different way. Anyways, ahead of them, you do expect Omar Mamosh, Kevin De Bruyne, as well as Jeremy Doku, and then, of course, brought Erling Haaland to lead the lines. Remember, previously, in the absence of Braut Erling Haaland, it's been Omar Mamosh that was leading the lines. But now that the big man is back, I do expect that kind of at least probable lineup in as far as that fixture is concerned. Now, in terms of my prediction, as much as I would really wish and love to watch Crystal Palace win it all, because we've had weaker teams go on to win the FA Cup in years gone by. We remember Wigan under Roberto Martinez. We remember not so far back when Leicester City won it under Brandon Rodgers. We remember when Portsmouth, I think in 2008, went on to win it under Harry Redknapp, was their manager at the time. That's Portsmouth side that had, I think, David James as the goalkeeper. They still had Nwankwo Kanu in that team, possibly. So really, it does not come very often that an underdog gets to win it. Unfortunately, I do not think today will be the day for Crystal Palace to go ahead and win it. As impressive as they've been in the run to the final, I do think Man City really hold the advantage. Like I said, a final is often not easy to hold because it's a do or die game. It's a make or break. It's by hook or crook. You win it by any means possible. You give it your all, and I do expect Crystal Palace to do nothing but less than give it their all. However, I do not think that eventually they can overcome Man City. I think Man City may end up being too good for them and beat them by 3-1 or by 2-1, at least in that kind of sense. So that's my prediction for the FA Cup final. Anyways, allow us to move on away from the FA Cup final, but that game is coming to you at 18:30 hours or 6:30 p.m. East African time, depending on your timelines. I know it will be around 4:30 p.m. UK time, in as far as that is concerned, and then it may be about 8:30 p.m. Indian time, maybe thereabout. So that's the expectation in as far as that fixture is concerned. Anyways, allow us to move on to the Premier League because now because we do have the FA Cup final this weekend. There are no Premier League games on Saturday, so do not expect any on Saturday. Expect our Premier League games to come to you on Sunday. Yes, on Sunday. That is when games will be coming to you in as far as the Premier League is concerned. And the early kickoff will come between, I think, Everton. Yes, excuse me. The early kickoff will be between Everton and Southampton at 2:30 p.m. Then at a 4:15, we'll have West Ham United up against Nottingham Forest. Brentford at 5 will be up against Fulham, and then still at the same kickoff time, Leicester City will be up against Ipswich Town, and later on at 6:30, Arsenal will be up against Newcastle United, and that's where the gist of our conversation is going to be. But that game between Nottingham Forest and West Ham United is just as important because Nottingham Forest are still hopeful, even though their chances are slim that they can finish in the top 5, but they will try to push it down to the final game of the season. So that's why that game is important for them. Anyways, Newcastle versus Arsenal. I mean, if you're Arsenal, you wouldn't want to really lose this game because in one way or the other, it could guarantee that you finish in second place, but also you do face a team that you really find trouble winning against. I can see Mariam Omoto is back with us. Hello, good afternoon, my brother from Uganda. Thank you so much, Mariam, for joining us once again. Kindly like the broadcast. I was giving you a shout out earlier on while you were away, but it's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. So, and you may have missed on the segment where we're talking about Liverpool and transfers, but we'll come back to the tail end of it after this preview. So, like I was saying, Arsenal, Newcastle, Arsenal are going to have to suffer. One, of course, they've had so many injuries that we've spoken about extensively, but this is a very big game. This is a very important game. It's their first final game of the season. That's final game at home of the season. Because the very last game of the season, they are going to be away to Southampton at the St. Mary's Stadium. So this is the last home game of the season at the Emirates Stadium. That's one. Two, they are going to be unveiling their new kit. That's what they will be wearing, their home kit for next season. We also that red kit, very beautiful kit. We'll wait to see the others. I didn't get the chance to do. Mariam is saying, any good news from Liverpool? Yes, there's some good news in Liverpool. We had discussed it earlier on in the broadcast, but I'll revisit it in just a bit after this preview of the Arsenal Newcastle game. So, like I was saying, they're going to be unveiling their kits. Kai Havertz, they're welcoming back Kai Havertz from that 3 months plus injury, and then Declan Rice did return to training. Urian Timber could be a doubt because he did not train, I think, on Wednesday. But according to Mikel Arteta, he was involved in a bit of training in the latter days, and he said he will see, depending on what the doctors are informed of him, in anticipation to the match and that kind of thing. I think their final training sessions will be today to see who will be available to start. Of course, the fixture, as we all know, comes a little too early for the likes of Gabriel Jesus, Gabriel Magalhaes, Takahiro Tomiyasu. Those players have been quite injured for some time, and then of course Leandro Trossard. Leandro Trossard went off in that Liverpool game with fears of a hamstring injury, but Mikel Arteta was saying he was involved in some light work. So again, they'll be waiting for decisions to be made by the team doctors. But if you do not see any of Leandro Trossard or Urian Timber in that matchday squad on Super Sunday, please bear in mind that those could be the issues But should they be available, we will see what kind of team Mikel Arteta would field. But of course, yes, the expectation is that Mikel Arteta will field a very strong team against a team that they do struggle to beat. Newcastle this season have already beaten up against Arsenal on 3 different occasions. I think was it in October or November they beat up against Arsenal by a goal to nil. That was in the Premier League, and also beat them home and away in the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup by 2 goals to nil at the Emirates Stadium and by 2 goals to nil at St James's Park. For those of you that care to remember, of course, Newcastle went on to win the Carabao Cup after beating Liverpool in the final by 2 goals to 1. So really, it's a side that maybe Arsenal dread to face, but also Newcastle have never beaten Arsenal 4 consecutive times in history in the same season. So we are waiting to see if they can do that. If there's any team that you can count on to be capable of going to Arsenal and beat them, it is Newcastle. They just know how to beat Arsenal in recent times, because for some reason, and I say this, is Arsenal do struggle to beat up against teams that set up with a low block. They struggle to penetrate them. They struggle to break through them, and they kind of struggled against Newcastle in recent times. Because even last season, although last season Arsenal beat up against Newcastle by 4 goals to 1. That was in the last home fixture for Arsenal. And then, of course, Newcastle won the controversial reverse fixture by a goal to nil. We all remember, I think it was Joelinton fouling Gabriel Magalhaes in the build-up to that goal that was scored by Anthony Gordon. Then the elbow by Bruno Guimaraes against Jorginho that wasn't, called for foul and never got booked. And yet last weekend we saw Nicholas Jackson being given a red card for an elbow against Steven Botman. So those kinds of, it's a game that comes with its skirmishes. But then also, I think this was in May 2023. Arsenal went to St James's Park and beat up against Newcastle by 2 goals to nil. So when you look at the last 5 meetings, in as far as the Premier League is concerned, Newcastle have won at least 2 of those. Arsenal have won 2, and then the other has been a draw, a goalless draw. So it's a home game. Arsenal really need to win it. They've not really been on a good run of form because they've only had 1 win in their last 5 fixtures. Since the year 2007, I have been a Liverpool fan. Oh, wow, that's been quite some time. Mariam, I'd be interested in knowing what attracted you to support Liverpool, or how you started supporting Liverpool, especially knowing that it dates as far back as only 2007 or that far, because in 2007, yes, Liverpool were a good team and they were competing for the Premier League, I remember, but also they went to the finals of the UEFA Champions League and lost to AC Milan by 2 goals to 1, I think. So I'll be interested in knowing what led you to support Liverpool. So when you look at Arsenal in the last 5 fixtures, like I said, I mean, they've only won one single game, and that game was against Ipswich Town, 4-0. Then in between there, they did lose to AFC Bournemouth. That was last weekend, but won by 2 goals to 1. And then they've had, the rest have been draws against Brentford, against Crystal Palace, against Liverpool. When you wind things back, there were draws against Everton. There were draws against Manchester United. They've just not been winning games. That's what has happened to this Arsenal side, and it begs the question of when will they win again? Will it be tomorrow that they get to win again? And then they face a Newcastle side who have won 3 of their last 5 games, and drawn 1 and lost 1. That loss coming against Aston Villa in a 4-1 defeat, and the draw coming against Brighton in a 1-1 draw. And then, of course, they beat up against Chelsea last weekend by 2 goals to nil, and then prior to that, beat up against Ipswich and Crystal Palace as the other victories to their name in the last 5 fixtures. So then it's again, it's going to be a midfield battle. Maybe Thomas Partey, Declan Rice, because Mikel Merino will be absent for this fixture because he did get a stupid red card in that 2-2 draw against Liverpool, a game in which he had scored to score his 7th Premier League goal of the season, I think, ever since he started playing as a false 9 and provided 4 assists. So You do hope that because Declan Rice did return to training after missing that trip to Anfield, you do expect Martin Odegaard, Thomas Partey, and Declan Rice to start in that midfield to battle it up against Bruno Guimaraes, to battle it against Sandro Tonali and maybe Joe Willock, or depending on who Newcastle set up with. But because it's Arsenal, they may look to have a middle low, a very low block, and that may mean that they play with 3 centre backs and then play with wing backs who form a midfield kind of 4 in that kind of sense, as we look at their probable lineup. But should Declan Rice not be fit to start, Jorginho is back in the squad. Excuse me, he could start in that game as Arsenal look to have a double pivot in that kind of sense. But for me, I think the game will be won in the midfield. Whoever dominates that midfield will have a chance to win the game. But also, the reason why it may not be a guarantee is that sometimes when Newcastle play with the low block, Arsenal keep on probing to try and break that. Then they catch them on the counter because Alexander Isak is quite fast. Harvey Barnes or Anthony Gordon, quite fast players that can run in behind the Arsenal defenders, who usually play with a very high line and cause them all sorts of problems. But I'm going to, my instincts are inclined to a draw for this game, a 1-1 draw. But I also have the feeling that given that it's a home game, given how bad the season they've had in some respects, Arsenal fans would also want to give something to fans to be happy about in their final home game, but also they would want to be contributors to the party spoilers of trying to stop Newcastle from qualifying for next season's UEFA Champions League. And what better way to do it than beating them yourself as at this stage of the season? But again, I'm still inclined about a 1-1 draw, or in that kind of sense. But then I also get the feeling that Arsenal could make it in that sense. So that's why I'm torn. But we will see. But as far as the probable lineups are concerned, we do expect David Raya in goal. I do expect Ben White to start at right back because of the injury concerns that team has had in recent times. He really played himself off the park in that game against Liverpool. So William Saliba alongside Jakub Kiwior, as well as Miles Lewis-Kelly at left back, and then a midfield of Thomas Partey, Martin Odegaard, and I'm going for Jorginho. But I wouldn't be surprised if Declan Rice starts. It could be that maybe Mikel Arteta is not looking to risk him so much. That's Declan Rice, because when you have that hamstring nudge, it's oftentimes different. And then ahead of them, I do expect Bukayo Saka to start, Ethan Nwaneri, and Gabriel Martinelli. Now, unless because even if Leandro Trossard was to be back and fit enough to start, I still do not think that they will be quick to start him. Really, I really don't think so, and that's why I think it could be Gabriel Martinelli that starts as a centre forward. I will remember I gave Liverpool the Ibrahim Konate and Virgil van Dijk all sorts of troubles when he started playing as the centre forward in that 2-2 draw. So we all remember that over last weekend. So that's why I picked him to be the centre forward in this particular game. On the side of Newcastle, you do expect Nick Pope in goal. You do expect Steven Botman, Dan Burn, as well as Fabian Schär. But if Steven Botman is not available, then Emil Kraft could be available to start. Then Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, Jacob Murphy, and Tino Livramento in that midfield. And then ahead of them is Harvey Barnes, Anton Gordon, as well as Alexander Isak, who has scored 23 Premier League goals and provided, I think, 6 assists in as far as this season is concerned. So really, that's as impressive as things come. So that's the game between Newcastle and Arsenal on Super Sunday. For Liverpool will be in action on Monday, so we'll get to speak about that game, I think, on Monday morning. That's when we'll look to do the preview or thereabout. And then, of course, we'll see on the other games. Liverpool are in action on Monday against Brighton, and then the other games will come. Man City will be up against FC Bournemouth on Tuesday, as well as Crystal Palace up against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, let me answer some of these questions. Tamal Press asked, who do you think will win the UEFA Champions League? Again, I'll reiterate that I do think PSG will go ahead and win it when they meet Inter Milan on May 31st at the Allianz Arena. And then Mariam responded to us saying, my brother, for me, I have grown up fighting to be a winner. And then you come back to say, that is the reason why I do not want someone who want to give up. Okay, that is in respect to how and why she started supporting Liverpool. But to revisit the news at Liverpool is that Liverpool are interested in signing Milos Kakes. That's the left back at AFC Bournemouth. He's a player that we've spoken about here before, Milos Kakes, because he's been targeted by teams like Liverpool, by Real Madrid. Have held conversations about him as a left back that they would look to target, because we all know Ferland Mendy is oftentimes injured in as far as his Real Madrid campaign is concerned. So, but yes, Liverpool are interested in signing Milos Kakes from AFC Bournemouth, and that deal could cost them anywhere in the region of £45 million, because that's after they've made good advances in signing Jeremy Frimpong, who seems like it's now a matter of when, not if, for him to join Liverpool from Bayer Leverkusen there for about 35 to 45 million euros, because that's the speculation in regards to his release clause at the moment from Bayer Leverkusen. Jeremy Frimpong, very, very good right back. But just as much as the case was with Alexander Trent-Arnold, he's very, very good going forward, as opposed to his defensive solidity. He will need some improvements to be a better defender. But I mean, Liverpool fans are used to that, because even Alexander Trent-Arnold did struggle in many games when it came to his defensive duties, but overall, he was a very immaculate player. And then Liverpool are also interested in signing Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace. He's a player that they are monitoring because they do want a central midfielder. We all know that last summer they tried to push for Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad. That deal didn't go through. So now they are looking for somebody to help Ryan Gravenberch and Wataru Endo in that midfield, and they are pointing their sights to Adam Wharton of Crystal Palace. But they will face some competition from the likes of Manchester United in attempting to sign Adam Wharton. While for Milos Kakes, it will be Liverpool and Chelsea that it will be Real Madrid and Chelsea that rival him for the signature of Milos Kakes. And then, of course, yesterday, like I mentioned, they are also monitoring the situation with Florian Wirtz. Florian Wirtz, they would like to sign him from Bayer Leverkusen, as well as Alexander Isak. They hold interest in Alexander Isak, that's the striker at Newcastle, but they are also monitoring the situation with Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt. So, for as far as summer targets are concerned, that's where the story is revolving around Liverpool. Milos Kakes, Adam Wharton, Jeremy Frimpong, Florian Wirtz, Alexander Isak, and Hugo Ekitike. So that's the news there. Real Madrid have also looked at the player. That's Adam Wharton, and I think Barcelona, they've been mentioned in some sections about potential moves for those players. Anyways, in as far as so Liverpool are set to rival Real Madrid and Barcelona for the £60 million rated Crystal Palace and English midfielder Adam Wharton, only 21 years of age, by the way, still very young player, but you can see he's already Real Madrid and Barcelona are monitoring the situation. That's according to Daily Mail. And then a move for Chelsea's French striker Christopher Nkunku could also be part of Liverpool's summer plans. Now, this for me would be a surprise, because among all these strikers they've scouted, Christopher Nkunku was never in the frame. But I mean, It is Bayern Munich that have highly been on the front in the pursuit of Christopher Nkunku. They wanted to sign him in January, but that deal did not go through. I do not know what the conversation really was that denied them to, see the deal through. Maybe it was due to finances and that kind of thing. But Bayern Munich have always held interest in signing Christopher Nkunku, for whom, according to the manager in Enzo Maresca and the Chelsea hierarchy, things have not really worked out. He doesn't fit well into Enzo Maresca's system. Enzo Maresca, they say, regardless of what happens this season, whether they qualify for the UEFA Champions League, whether they win the UEFA Conference League, will remain for another year at Chelsea to see how better he can make that team. Then the other news, Wolves are stepping up in their efforts to sign Liverpool's English midfielder, Harvey Elliott. That's the 22-year-old. Wolves are interested in signing him. Then Premier League trio, that's Chelsea, Man City, and Arsenal, have already held talks with agents of Real Madrid's 24-year-old Brazilian, that's Rodrigo Goes, who has fallen down the pecking order at the Bernabeu. This is a player we spoke about last night. Again, Rodrigo Goes, only 24 years of age, a very good dynamic player, can play anywhere across the front three, whether as the center forward, although he predominantly prefers coming off the left-hand side, but he can also play from the right. So, English clubs are really monitoring that situation. Man City, Chelsea, and Arsenal really interested in getting the services of the Brazilian international. That's according to French and Spanish newspapers. Then Aston Villa are hoping to turn Axel Disasi's loan move from Chelsea into a permanent deal this summer, with the club already starting negotiations with the 27-year-old French defender. That's according to Football Mercato in France. And then Chelsea have a short list of potential centre-back signings, including 22-year-old Englishman Gerard Braithwaite of Everton. That's a player we've spoken about. They've looked at Gerard Braithwaite. They've looked at Mark Guehi of Crystal Palace, who is also only 24 years of age. And of course, they also looked at Dean Howson. But like we've spoken, Dean Howson is now a Real Madrid player after signing contracts last evening, following completing his medical successfully in London, and he will be joining Real Madrid for £50 million on a 5-year contract that runs up to until June 2030. So that's that. But Chelsea remain in the market for a centre back, and Mark Guehi and Gerard Braithwaite will be players that they really look at in the coming days. Then reports also indicate that Mark Guehi could be looking to run down his contract at Crystal Palace and wait for a dream move to either Barcelona or Real Madrid. That's according to the Sun. Then Aston Villa could bring Barcelona's 25-year-old Spanish striker Ferran Torres back to the Premier League for a fee in the region of £42 million during the summer. Remember, Ferran Torres did have a stint at Manchester City. That's where he left to join Barcelona. And then Southampton are interested in Stamford Bridge right back Max Johnson, 21 years, with the Scottish international reportedly available for only £3 million. That's according to Sky Sport. While Wrexham are considering a move for 26-year-old Nottingham Forest midfielder Lewis O'Brien, currently on loan at Swansea following their promotion to the Championship. So that's the latest in as far as transfer gossip is concerned. And that's the gist of the conversation that I did have for you this morning. We're already 42 minutes past the afternoon here down in Kampala. Thank you all to those that have been with us, those that have joined us in the course of this broadcast. It's been really good to have you. Tamal Prince, it was a pleasure having you. Mariam Omoto, good to have you back as always. I want to send my shout outs to all those that are always in the Kamoni, in the ventilators. They don't like the broadcast, they do not say anything, but they are always following the conversation. Your efforts are equally much appreciated. Thank you to all our new subscribers. Welcome to the community. Thank you for the love and support from India, from Safa Ali, from Chetan Singh, and all the others that have joined us on this journey. Rabin Vlog from Nepal, who currently works in Iraq, he did say that Iraq is now a stable country as compared to years gone by. But anyways, it's always been a pleasure having you. Let's catch up later in the day if there's any news. But most notably, maybe we'll be here to speak about more of that FA Cup final between Manchester City and Crystal Palace. Otherwise, have yourself a wonderful day and the rest of the weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.